everybody, my name is Alex. Today is a special day because I'm not going to talk about any topic because I'm going to talk about this story called The Adventures of Sinbad the Sailor. This story is originally by Katie Diaz and also illustrated by Patty Monter because here you will see the illustrations. They're pretty and cool, right? Yes, it's a very, very adventurous story. And also, I like the story with its adventures. If you imagine if you go out to sea, like Sinbad the Sailor, and first for adventure maybe, and maybe Sinbad gets the right choice, and that's his lucky day, right? So, now let's begin and talk about the Adventures of Sinbad the Sailor. And it is published by the Usborne, and this is a story series Esther by Leslie Sims, designed by Russell Punter, and now and copyright published in 2007 by Usborne Publishing Ltd. So let's begin. Chapter 1. Here is the contents, which is on page 3. And I have 7 pages. It is Sinbad's first voyage. Sinbad's first voyage, once time, long ago in the city of Baghdad, his city where he lives, and Sinbad lived with his mother, which is a rich merchant. But when the merchant died, he had all his fortune because he has his money. And he is so rich that he don't have to work. Here. And he get into parades like this in the illustration. Is it funny? Yes. Okay. And he said, "Don't worry, everything is fine on me." And he decided to make fine clothes on wild parties and dance and parade with everyone. One day, he found his purse empty. He had no money anymore. And he said, "I can't believe I spent all my fortune," he said to himself. He decided to follow in his father's footsteps and sell a lot of things, like silks and spices, and trade with them. And we're sailing to Barca, then out to sea. Then that a group of merchants by loading the ship. And soon Sinbad decided to join them and jump on the ship. After a week in the sea, they landed by a sandy, small island beach on the middle of the coast. When suddenly they were cooking some supper over a fire, when the ground began to tremble. One merchant said, "This island is moving." And another said, "It's not an island at all." "You're on a whale," said the captain, and swam to the ship. As soon they were off, and they drowned. Many men drowned, but Sinbad and some others, only Sinbad was lucky, and he clung onto a wooden chest and floated away on a distant island, as you see in the picture here. And you see the man on the horseback, which saw him and soon decided to get him there, and took him to see his ruler, which is King, it's hard to pronounce, Maharjan. King Maharjan. Okay. So, Sinbad told the king about the whale and all the stories and adventures. And he said, "I'm stranded at home." And so the king said, "Work for me and I'll pay you, and I'll look after you." And said the king, and he said, "Okay." And one day he was on duty at the port when a captain came to see him. He said, "Sir, where can we sell these silks and spices?" And he asked. Sinbad was amazed. "I had some silk like that," he said. "Well, these silks belonged to a merchant called Sinbad, and that's Sinbad. Here. And look at this picture. It's funny, right? He is having a dialogue or conversation here. And the captain gave Sinbad his silks and spices. After selling an excellent price, Sinbad had joined the captain's ship and set for Baghdad, his home. Chapter 2, which is named Itchy Feet. At first, Sinbad was delighted to be ready to sail home again, but soon he had itchy feet. He wanted to visit new places, so he bought more silks and spices so that he can trade. A friendly captain welcomed him on board the ship, and they headed for the high seas. He said, "This is the life." One day, they stopped at a deserted island to collect fresh water. Sinbad sat down in a shady spot and fell asleep. After an hour later, he woke up in panic. The ship had disappeared without him. Sinbad climbed a tree and looked over off the island. All he could see was one huge white egg. As Sinbad watched, a gigantic bird flew down and settled to sleep. "That must be a roc," he said, and the roc bird was very strong. When the roc slept until the roc woke up, it stretched its giant wings and soared into the sky. Sinbad found himself dangling high above the clouds, because before he had unwound his turban, crept up to the bird, and tied himself to its leg to go home. He gulped, and before long the roc dived down the deep valley. He hid beneath his feet and quickly untied himself. And soon the cliff was full of snakes. He took some jewelry with him, but the snakes decided to get there. As soon as Sinbad ducked down, how could he escape? And soon, seeing the roc circling overhead gave him an idea. Quickly, he tied himself to a sheep and waited and waited and waited. In no time, a roc swooped down and grabbed the sheep in its claws. It flew out the valley with Sinbad trailing below. His first journey went well. And as it was in sight when a bunch of short, ugly, and very hairy men ambushed the ship. One by one, the hairy men threw the merchants aboard, then sailed away. One merchant said, "How dare you take the ship?" Here is the funny picture. The miserable merchants were washed into a beach. They explored the new shore and found a country yard filled with pots of firewood. But the country yard was owned by a very, very greedy giant who licked his lips when he saw his owners and visitors. Before he could blink, he roasted a fat merchant. After supper, the giant fell asleep. They decided to plan that they could make a raft so that they can, for the firewood here, in this picture. But then, at dawn when the giant woke up, he decided he saw the merchants pushing off the raft until suddenly he threw some rocks at it, and the merchant screamed, and the raft turned into pieces. Here, is it fun? Quite funny. And soon, when he got the next thing he knew, they had different into a stony beach, and a huge snake had wound itself in them and eyed the three men. Yes, they were fast asleep at the shore and fainted under the hot sun. But Sinbad didn't dare to move until the snake slithered off. He gazed out to sea, praying for a ship to arrive, and soon at last, to his luck, he had found a ship that could arrive. Sinbad recognized the captain from his second journey, and he had a conversation still. "You left me stranded on a desert island." "Sorry about that, though." Within a week, Sinbad was back in Baghdad, his home. Let's go into chapter 4, Herds of Men. "Home again!" shouted Sinbad, but it didn't take long before he was back at a market and trading the silks and spices with anybody to sell again. He joined another merchant ship and traded his goods from port to port. One day, a sudden gale whipped up the waves, and water came crashing on the deck and smashed the ship. But Sinbad and the other 7 were luckier merchants than the rest. They clung onto a broken mast, and so they drifted far off shore. Some islanders found the men and took them to the king. "Welcome," said the king. "Please join us for a feast." They are all starving, but they decided to gobble up everything. But soon they transformed into slurping and gurgling and lazy animals, like pigs and boars and goats and sheep. "Stop eating," Sinbad cried, but the men no longer understood him because they were animals. An islander rounded up Sinbad's friends and heard them through the door again, and Sinbad hid in a dark corner. When no one was looking, he fled in the palace grounds. He ran straight through the herd of men and were grazing in a field, and he didn't stop until he reached the other side of the island. "I see a sail!" There, he couldn't believe his luck. A ship was sailing across the shore, and he decided to call it for help. Chapter 5 is The Rock's Revenge. The problem was Sinbad found life at home dull after his adventures. He didn't have anything to do. One morning he saw a beautiful new ship at a port and decided to buy it. He loaded his ship with silks and spices, and soon he hired an eager crew and set sail again. The 2 men they come to an island with another roc's egg. This time, some sailors were throwing rocks at the eggs. After 50 stones later, it cracked. "Fools!" cried Sinbad. "The mother rock will want revenge." As they sailed away, a dark shape hid the sun. And soon it was a massive rock. And she dropped a massive boulder on the ship, and all but Sinbad perished in the sea. Yet again, Sinbad was saved. This time he was swept to leave the island. As he paused for a while by a stream, he saw a sad troll. "What's wrong?" Sinbad helped the troll cross the stream, but then the troll refused to get down from Sinbad's shoulders. It just tightened his grip around his neck. 4 days, Sinbad was the troll's prisoner. He was carried everywhere and he was exhausted. But soon he had a wine of flask, and he dropped it and he let the troll drink it. After a few gurglers and burps, it toppled to the ground. And this is the final chapter. This is the second final chapter, which is chapter 6, Risking the River. Sinbad was happy, simply lazing around at home. Until then, some merchants came to visit, and their tales of travel filled Sinbad with jealousy and envy. He set sail once more, trading from port to port again, began. What a lovely, calm evening. Until one night, the ship sailed off, of course. In the gloom, no one saw the sharp rocks instead, and they crashed into it. And soon, one by one, they found nothing and starved to death. And soon Sinbad decided to run off. He decided to find some wood, but he made a raft and traveled into a cave. His luck wasn't quite there, but soon when he was lying on a sunny bank, people saw him, and a local merchant gave Sinbad some food in return for several Jews and sent him a ship to Baghdad again. This is the final voyage, Chapter 7. Back home, Sinbad's Jews bought him all kinds of treats. But guess what? Sinbad still wasn't quite happy. Soon it will be too old to travel, he thought. And that's true, because soon he set out for the final journey. He was aboard a merchant ship in the China Sea when a terrible storm blew up. A monster whale surged up through the waves. As it got closer, its massive jaws reached the ship and crashed into it. Luckily, Sinbad managed to jump overboard, and soon he decided to swept off inshore. Another close escape. I don't know how to do it. As he wandered in exotic forest, he found a river flowing into a cave. Aha! I'll build another raft with the wood he had bought earlier. But his river carried him through the darkness into a steep waterfall. I'm a dead man! Until he screamed and he started falling. The people said, suddenly he stopped in midair. A surprised old man had caught him in a net. You need to dry off, said the man, and he took Sinbad to home with him. The old man asked his daughter, Maria, decided to fetch her some clothes, and Sinbad gazed at her open mouth. He was never a lovely man, and soon, after some weeks, Sinbad and Maria fell in love. With the old man's blessing, the couple married, and soon a year later, Imra's father died of a very old age, leaving her and Sinbad a fortune. And soon he decided to go sailing again, and Sinbad liked to go sailing. After a few months at sea, they found themselves in Baghdad and lived happily ever after. And Imra cried, "What a gorgeous city!" And that is the end. The Adventures of Sinbad the Sailor really interested me so much that I loved the story and read it quite a lot of times, about 4 to 5 times. And maybe this is an adventurous story. Maybe you can buy it and publish it, and you could have other Newsborn series. And now, this is the end. Goodbye, everybody, and thank you for listening.
What can you learn from this book?
Well, I can learn an adventurous story about Sinbad the Sailor. So, it's really cool, right? Is it cool, Mom? Okay. So, goodbye, everybody. Thank you for listening.